More mail day. This one's from China, I'm pretty sure. Ooh, ooh. That's for this guy. Bam. Man, that kind of came quicker than I thought it would. It's pretty cool. Carbon fiber and aluminum. It's like real. It's like a real. It's a real toy. That's going to be exciting. And all this stuff. Let's see what all we got in here real quick. Man, all of the things in blue, baby. Some A-arms, links, bulkheads of some kind, knuckles, front rear knuckles. Yeah. CVDs, shocks. Seems good. You know what's interesting? And this is very weird to me, actually. And I feel like I saw this when I ordered it. So these WLToys have these clip spots. And then you can replace the front with the mount for any Kyosho Mini Z bodies, right? They just clip in like the Kyosho Mini Z's clip. But for some reason, this guy, it's got the clip on this side, but on this side, it's up here. Or I guess that's for a battery strap. I don't know. There's not a clip on this side. It's very, maybe it clips in here. I don't know. It's very strange, actually. Hold on. Here's a Mini Z body, right? And normally, well, we've got body mounts on here, so that's not going to work. We don't have the front clip, but you can see these clips here clip in to this. It's not going to go very well because, again, the body hasn't been fitted to it, and there's other stuff going on, but that's what they're supposed to be there for. Around here, I am pretty sure we'll clip on this side. See, clip on that side, fine, but then there's no clip on this side at all. Like how the design flaw. Like why even put this mount here if you can't mount it on the other side? Why even have this here if you just plan on using pins, body pins and a Lexan? I don't know. That's weird. Weird design choice. Maybe they expect the body to be able to hold on with just a single side. And you don't put your, I don't know what's going on there. Freaking weird. And I could always take the stock. Which way does this go? I could always take this aluminum battery tray part out and put the stock plastic ones back in. Maybe. Oh, that's just so bad. That's so bad. Why would they do that? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. If you know, tell me in the comments. Because this doesn't make any sense to me. I also don't know what this is for. Oh, I guess that's for the battery to, yeah. Got it. Still, I don't understand why they wouldn't have designed this to have this shape in it so you could have a body clip on there. Or even cut this out so you can mount this exact piece right here. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I wonder if I can buy just this. Or, like I said, maybe we'll just use the stock one here. We can just cut this right here. But that's not going to hold very well. I don't know. I kind of see what they did and why they did it, kind of, but also kind of not. So we're pulling this guy apart for the first time, and I never realized just how kind of poorly designed some of this is to work on. You have to actually, to get the motor out, you have to pull the entire chassis off, essentially. The motor is attached to the motor mount here, right? And that motor mount has the axle running through it. So the all-wheel drive shaft is running through that same motor mount, which means to get the motor off, essentially, you have to pull off, I guess you could just do this. You just pull off the back screws, and then you could pull this out, and then you could do the motor that way, and you get the motor out, but then you still, I mean, yeah, that's still a lot of work, actually. We're going to go ahead and pull it all apart, though. We're going to pull off the front as well, and then we'll have to get all the internals out to put in our new chassis. But yeah, it's you can't just pull the motor out. You have to literally unscrew the motor mount and then unscrew the entire rear and then lift this up a little so you can slide it down and risk bending it. I mean, we aren't, but you could. So we got the diff in and the drive shaft, essentially the 4-wheel drive shaft. Remember, we're only doing 2-wheel drive here, so we didn't install the diff or any of the diff parts in there. When we were pulling the pinion off the stock motor, we damaged the motor. This pinion was on there very hard, and we don't have a pinion puller, so when we were pulling on it, it actually pulled the shaft and caused binding in the motor, and I said, screw it, so we'll just use a PN, this is a PN 70, PN 90, PN 70. This is a PN 70, PN 90s for the SCXs. So yeah, PN 70 on this one. So a Mini Z motor, and we were able to put the pinion on there. It's not as tight as it was before, but it should be good, and everything's working. So go ahead and show you. It is a little loud, and it is a little vibraty, and we've checked for binding and everything, so we should be fine, but everything's brand new components, even the diff, remember? So and the PN motor has a lot of kind of drag brake on it, so that's probably part of it. But we think it'll do good. We'll make sure, this diff's already lubed up from last time, and we'll make sure that all our bearings are good before we really run it. But just wanted to make sure we were in there running and we're good, and the motor fit, and the pinion's working, and it is. Our diff works fine. So yeah, we're good to go. Now we just got to put on all of our new cool aluminum blue stuff. So we went ahead and popped our bearings out of our original front knuckles. And don't forget, we're going to be using these cut shafts that we originally had, where they don't have the CVD in there. It's just the axle shaft. So we'll be using those and our new blue knuckles. The machining on these seems pretty high quality. We'll have to see how the tolerances are, but so far so good.
A few moments later.
So we got the A-arms on and we got the front knuckles on. Seems like we're probably going to be using a lot of Loctite. They're just the way this is held in. It's just a screw going in. And whenever you have metal going into metal, Loctite is a good idea. Not the super tight lock, not the super permanent Loctite, just the blue stuff. So it seems like they come with a lot of these extra little ball joints, but you don't really use them because everything's got built-in ball joints. So I guess that's if you're mixing and matching, say you're just putting the knuckles on and you were trying to put it on the stock, you would need all the ball joints, but you don't need them if you have everything because all the links are built in with the ball joints. Well, all the ball joints are built into the links. So we got all of our knuckles in. We're installing the rear control link here, and it goes on the original, essentially just goes into the diff case, right? It's on a ball. And so this is, we pull out our diff case screws here. There's 4 of them, right? Pull out the back 2, and we're putting in this link and the screws that come with. So it's odd. This long screw came with one of the other parts kits. I think it was with the A-arms. And then these other screws came with these links, and there's only one of each of the different lengths. And the length we need, I believe, is this one, where it essentially makes it through the arm and makes it through the case. I don't know if you'll be able to see. And into, actually, this may not even be the correct one. No, we need the longer one, so we need this one. And actually, we can do it here. Right? And even that might be, no, that should be fine because the other side goes all the way down. But what's odd is they only came with one screw. So I guess we'll use this extra long one and we'll cut it down. It was just interesting to me that it came with like one of each length. And then all the rest that are duplicated, I don't know if you can see here, but all these are the duplicates for other things. And then I think that's a servo horn. But yeah, we need 2 of these. Good thing we had an extra of these from the knuckle, or from the A-arms.
More moments later.
Well, we've gotten pretty far on it. We ended up using, I believe, the medium length and cutting down to be able to fit that in there for the A-arm, or for the link, control arm link. We also didn't have any kind of bushings or spacers for the steering linkage, so we had to use nuts, wheel nuts, to make a spacer, essentially, which is odd. And there's a ton of slop in this thing. So, I mean, we're not very happy with the quality of this, but they look good, and some of the parts are good quality. It's just, it takes a lot of tinkering. So on the rear here, we ended up having to cut the carbon fiber so that we could actually let the A-arms drop down, because if you see on the front, the A-arms just totally hit on the carbon fiber. And the original was like that, but the A-arms were slightly thinner. So we went ahead and switched the A-arm too. And it was still just, it was laying flat. And we want a little bit more clearance. Like we can't even, with these wheels and tires, it rubs on the ground. It's ridiculous. So we either need some thicker tires, which is not ideal, or some bigger wheels. But we went ahead and cut the carbon fiber here, which allowed the A-arms to drop down. And if you notice, we obviously went to plastic A-arm on this side. And that's because there's a ton of binding on this. It like binds up on the ball, and it's got like no movement. It's horrible. It's really bad. So we switched it over to the original plastic ones, and it's a lot smoother, a lot more smooth. We also stuck, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny washer spacer in there, and that helps remove some of the forward to back play that we saw on the front, and you can see it on this side too. So there's tons of forward and back play here, but we fixed most of it there. It's hard to tell because I'm moving it, but that also means that it's kind of stiff. We'll probably put a little drip of oil in there. Might be better to find a thinner shim potentially, but it's not the worst. But yeah, this is not the best here. Like I said, you can see how much it's got play. There's a lot of tweaking that's involved, and for some reason these ball joints that are inside the A-arms are just bad. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a lot of movement in there. And it gets stuck. It'll actually hang up and bind up sometimes. Right, versus over here, it's a little more smooth. Still not perfect, but also these shocks kind of, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Again, not the most impressed. We won't know until we get it out and actually try to run it, but at least things are adjustable now. I have seen some people taking the links and they'll cut the stock plastic links. They'll cut them and then take the adjustable threaded piece that's in the middle and use that. So then you're still using the stock links as well. But yeah, I don't know. It also seems like there's kind of some binding in the drivetrain. It's not the motor to this, but it might be the all-wheel drive shaft, or maybe it's in the diff somewhere. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a little bit of something going on. We'll have to adjust our toe here with these here in the front. See if we can get these a little bit better. It's a little too much there. And this is horrible. Look at that. And yes, it's tight. Everything is tight. It has to do with the play here where the link connects. So we think we'll need to shim that as well. We'll put shims in there. Anyway, it's running, it steers, it goes in my hand. It probably will not go on the ground because, like I said, it's just too low. I don't know if you can see, but these A-arms are real flat. They don't have any sort of drop in them versus like this one. See how it's kind of got some angle on it. Has a little bit of drop. With this carbon, I'm gonna have to cut the fronts too, but the carbon fiber really, I don't know, it's supposed to be limited like that? Maybe, but these wheels don't even touch, these tires don't even touch the ground. Like, and I get that a lot of people run drift tires and they're plastic and they're thicker, they're more thick, but we're trying to run it on RCP track and not drift.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
After a ton of modifying and fabbing, I think we got to a place where we can actually drive the car. And we talked about doing this as a rear wheel conversion, basically, or a rear wheel. I don't know if I think there's some other conversions where people put monoshocks in the front. We haven't really dug deep into that. To be honest, we haven't really done a lot of research on this. We were just kind of going at whim, trying to just kind of figure it out ourselves and have fun with the build, which I've had fun. It has been a little frustrating sometimes, but overall it's been fun. But we went ahead and pulled out all the front diff and everything. So we're definitely, one of the issues we found was the drive shaft running in there. We still had to maintain a bearing and a gear up in the front here. And for some reason, I don't know if it's the chassis or this motor mount, because this is a solid motor mount where the motor goes on there and then the drive shaft runs through it, was binding up. This top piece, I know when we tried to put this back, there's like a little screw hole here. When we were putting that back in, we had to dremel that out and make the hole much larger, more elongated so that the motor mount could fit in there, because there was binding happening and it was just causing all kinds of issues and the motor wouldn't even turn the wheels. So anyway, we went ahead and figured, well, why have the chance of the binding up here in front and the extra you know, power being used to spin up in the bearing up there. And we found another rod. We cut it so that it had the little notch in it, and we're able to get our bearing and gear and everything and diff all set up on the, I don't know if you can see it very well, but this little rod here. So it just stops. So we've got our bearing here, and then our gear, and then bearing, and then inner diff gear, the pinion for the diff. So that's working. These shocks, I don't know why this car sits so low. Maybe we need different tires or wheels. I don't know. Ideally, we don't want super tall tires because then we have lots of issues with traction rolling. But I had to kind of shave down the shocks on the shock mounts a little bit. I also had to shave, you can see right here on the fronts, had to shave those down because all the screws and everything we tried to use here just wouldn't work, and it would just, as you tightened it down, it would tighten onto the actual shock housing itself, and it would just bind up, and you'd have no good movement in your suspension. Now we have some pretty decent movement in our suspension. We're able to tighten our screws all the way down to the, it's kind of like the ball joint. It's not really a ball joint, but the little bushing whatever in here. We can tighten it all the way down to the A-arm. We're using our plastic A-arms. We dremeled off the tabs that were on the chassis so that we could hopefully get a little bit lower ride height, just a little bit, because A-arms were hitting on the chassis tabs. We did that on the front and back. Same thing on these ones. We went and put the stock little spacers back in here just to give us a little bit preload, so the shocks are a little more stiff, but they're good. They're way better than they were. They were binding so bad it would just like stick, and I'd loosen everything up and it would still just kind of stick. The bottom A-arms were just doing something horrendous. I think that was part of it. It was a lot of little things. We also had to put shims in here. There's little tiny washer shims on every single control arm. On this one, this one, and so those 4 control arms. We didn't really do much here with these ones on the rear. All the steering stuff seems fine for the most part, with the exception of the steering rod was hitting on the drive shaft when the drive shaft was running through the all-wheel drive shaft. So we had to lower it, and we used nuts here. These are just wheel nuts. They fit right on the screw. We were able to space it down. I'm surprised there were no spacers that came with it. If you were actually using this for all-wheel drive, there's no way you could use the steering links. They would hit on the all-wheel drive. So we added that, and yeah, I think that's pretty much what we did here. You can see that we've got go. What happened? Did we shut off? I think we might shut off. Yeah, we did. So we've got go. We've got steer. There's still kind of a little bit of binding. I've noticed something going on here. I can hear it sometimes. It'll like click. I don't know if it's hitting on one of these. These ball joints that are in all of this aluminum stuff, all of these ball joints suck. They absolutely suck. They constantly grab. Same thing happens on the tops here. The link connects to the knuckle. It kind of, that's where a lot of binding happens when it does happen. Again, it's pretty smooth now. We'll have to see how it drives. Who knows? It might be too low. Like I said, I probably need some taller tires, or ideally a little bit bigger wheels so we can keep our tires thin. But at least the motor's going. That was a huge issue that I was having. It was tons of binding just in this area where the motor mount is, and the drive shaft goes from the diff through this motor mount to the front. Just tons of binding happening in there. The chassis is brand new. It should be perfectly flat, so I don't know what's going on there, but this is the least amount of resistance so far that we've had on the motor. It'll actually just kind of go slow. Before, we could full throttle it and it wouldn't even spin. And that was just from tightening down the motor mount. That's a big part of that. Anyway, let's see if it goes on the track. Guess we'll find out. All right, so we tried to run this thing. It was running fine for a while. We didn't have the body on it, and we think it was going bad anyway, but we hit the wall and fried the servo. So we stripped something out in there. Yeah, it's jacked. All right. So we got to figure that out, maybe put a new servo in. But it's getting closer. It's getting closer.
1 billion, zillion, jillion, billion, cotillion times later.
This thing has needed a lot of tweaking. The body clips on the side here, there's one on this side for like a regular Mini Z Kyosho style body, the body clips. But when you get to this side, for some reason there's like an odd body clip up here. And this is a single piece of aluminum. So we ended up having to cut this slot here so that our body would fit. Our body clip would have something to hold on to. But now we're good to go. See? We can slide it right in there. And our body fits nice and flat. Just odd, though, that the manufacturer of this chassis put a slit up here and not where it's supposed to be. And again, you can't turn it around because it's a single piece and it's like a C shape, right? So I don't know what they were thinking there. Don't know what they were thinking. We're getting it pretty tuned, though. It's getting around the track pretty well. We had to end up putting the stock plastic rear shocks back on the rear. It was just too much binding, but now it's nice and smooth. The front's nice and smooth. I don't know why the rear shocks were so bindy. For some reason, they were. We had to shave down our shock towers just a little bit so that our body would fit. You can see how close it is here. We actually had to cut the body out in that part because it just dipped down too far and hit the shock towers, and we weren't going to be able to take off any more on the shock tower, so we just cut out that front piece. And it looks cool. We could put something back in there if we wanted some meshing or something cool, but yeah, it's very close. I mean, it's sitting on the body. So, but like I said, we at least can get around the track now decently. The only thing that we have, I think, really left right now as far as major tweaking is concerned, oh yeah, we've got the stock A-arms. I don't remember if I mentioned that earlier. But what we're going to do is we have to adjust our diff. We actually, one of the diffs somehow got chewed up real bad, so we replaced it. This is a new diff. We also have a new servo. This is the metal servo gears. And we have to tighten up our diff. It's just too loose. It just spins. You can hear it when you're full throttle. It's just like, it sounds like it's spooling up, but it's not ideal because you have no punch, right? So we've got to tighten that up a little bit, and I think we'll be good to go. The easiest way to get these off, well, since we removed our drive shaft, I think you can do it even if you had the full drive shaft all-wheel drive, is just remove your 4 bottom screws, the 2 top plate screws, and you should be able to wiggle this way out. That way you don't have to take apart all of your suspension links and shock tower to be able to get in there and adjust the diff. Some of these actually have the diff cutout in the chassis plate, so that's kind of nice. Well, we kind of lied. You can't really tighten the diff through the bottom here. At least I can't figure out the easiest way to do it, so we have to pull it apart. Really, it's just pulling off your rear shock tower, so 3 screws there. You have to pull out your kingpins, and then the 4 screws that hold the diff case together, and then the whole thing just kind of comes apart. And there's your diff. So you have to pull the diff out to be able to tighten it on these, because there's a screw down in there. You can put your screw in there, or your screwdriver, and you can hold the nut, and you can tighten it with the screwdriver. Not a lot, just a little. We just needed a little bit extra so that we wouldn't spool up, essentially. Man, these bearings in here are crunchy. Not the bearings, but the diff bearings. They feel crunchy as heck. Maybe we'll take this guy apart and look at it. We probably should put a little bit of diff lube in there. Well, it's not the bearings there that feel crunchy. We're going to go ahead and use some atomic ball diff grease here. Just put a little bit in there to help it out. All right, so we've got it nice and lubed up. It's not nearly as crunchy. It's not too loose. It's actually fairly tight, but I think you turn it not even a tenth of a turn on the screw, and it's like super loose or super tight. So I think we're okay though. We're gonna go ahead and put it all back together, and then we're gonna go ahead and run it tonight. And hopefully it runs the best it's ever ran. We will find out though. Hope that's tight enough. it's better than it was, so we'll see. Another thing that we did when last time we worked on this was we put Loctite in all of these different links because there was a lot of play, and the Loctite helped reduce some of that play. You can also see these are shimmed. Pretty sure we showed that before, but yeah, Loctiting these tie rods definitely helps take out some of the play in there. Obviously not where the ball joints are, except for the screws, but yeah, the actual inner tie rod piece. I think we did not Loctite this side. See that? In here. They're pretty loose, but this one we definitely Loctited both sides, and this one I think we Loctited the inside. We could probably Loctite the outside there. Again, there's still a lot of play. You don't want to remove all the play because you want to be able to have freedom of movement in your suspension, but too much play is bad, and there was way too much play in there. All right, let's get our shock tower back on. Another thing of note is there's a little bit, when you're screwing on your shock towers, there's a little bit of play in those as well. You can see they kind of move up and down. And if you want to lower or raise your ride height, you can also make sure you're pushing down on your shock tower as you tighten it or leave it lifted up. We need the ride height, so we're going to make sure we push all the way down and get it as tight down as possible when we tighten it. And that'll help give us a little bit better ride height, a little bit higher, because we need a little bit more height. But even just that little half millimeter of difference is huge. Don't forget, on these small cars, the 128s, 127s, even 124ths, every millimeter is like 24 millimeters on a real car, so, or 28 millimeters, or whatever the scale is. So the tiniest adjustments make the biggest changes in these little guys. So just keep that in mind. Every little adjustment is huge. Oh yeah, that should be good.
One million, zillion, jillion, dillion, cotillion times later.
All right, so we ran it, stripped out some stuff again. These plastic diffs are horrible. It doesn't even take much, a little bit, and then we just kind of strip. We'll sit and spin right there. So not ideal. So we ended up grabbing these guys. And they come pretty loose, so you're definitely going to need to tighten them up. They are way loose, and but they're going to do better. I hope. I think our weak point might end up being here now. All of this being plastic. So we'll see how long this lasts. So these differentials also come with longer drive shafts, the dog bones, the CVDs. They're just a tad longer. And when I compared the diff, they are the same length, right? The C-cups on the diff appear to be the exact same length. Maybe like half a millimeter shorter. Maybe. Actually, here, let's look. So these are 31.53. And this one, yeah, like less than half a millimeter difference. But it still seemed to be right on the edge. And even on this one, the dog bones kind of sit right on the edge, and they do have a tendency to be able to pop out. So we're definitely going to use these longer CVDs, and that'll just, get our dog bones tucked in there a lot further, and it should help keep them inside the cups. Yeah. So let's do that. Yeah, there's no way those are coming out now. Hopefully they're not too long, but they look like they're good. They look like a good length. Our suspension doesn't really move much. It's about like that. So we should be fine. So we got it all back together, and we think it's always something with this car. We didn't even run it yet. We literally just got it back together, and we think our motor is it doesn't want to go, and it's not binding. We're not binding up. It's just I don't get it. Our diff is actually super loose. The PN motor naturally has a lot of like drag on it, so that's kind of why you can hear that and why it's stopping the diff. But yeah, you don't want to go. I think that motor's pretty done. Do you see the smoke? Ooh. Now it's going. What the heck? There's a little bit of oil on the bearings. On the motor bearing, I put a little bit on there. We use this. Maybe that's what's doing it. I don't know. We ran these motors underwater before to break them in. So you can see it's lighting up pretty bright in there. I don't know if you can see that. It's not getting hot. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to mess with it some more. If it fries it, it fries it. I think the contacts are pretty much just shot. So what's going on here? All right, we went in and pulled the back plate off. Tried to clean up the rotor here a little bit. We're going to clean up these contacts. This one's pretty dirty. We already cleaned, well, it was dirty. We cleaned it up a little bit. And then we'll put pull this side out. Let's go ahead and put this one back in. Okay. You pull these out by just kind of pulling up on this tab. And then you kind of push out and rotate the plate out. There you go, just like that. Then you can just rotate it out. Just make sure you don't bend the contact. You can see it's like super dirty on there. So we'll clean that off. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. Maybe there's more to it than we know. Could just be going bad altogether. There was a little bit of a excessive oil in there. Generally, when you're lubing stuff, you want to make sure you don't overdo it because dirt, track dirt, and whatever will stick to it. So you kind of want to make sure you don't get too crazy when you try to lube your bearings up and whatnot. Because again, if you have a bunch of excess, then dirt will stick to it. And when dirt sticks to it, then you have more issues and an even dirtier car or motor. So try to keep the lube localized. All right, we got it all back together. Got the motor cleaned up, and it definitely seems better. It's got good low speed. A lot less sparking and smoking. I think it was just super dirty and a little bit too much oil on the bearings got into the contact. Seems a lot better. Our diff is a little tight, but it just seems like it always loosens up on these guys. I don't know. It must be something about this style of diff. I don't know much. I've not really dealt with this kind of diff much. I usually just use have a spur gear on the Mini Zs. So the all-wheel drive thing is I'm not as experienced with. So it's probably something with that, or maybe it's just these cheapy diffs. But it seems like they loosen up pretty easily. So I'd rather have it too tight to start, and then over time it'll loosen up. It definitely seems better. We're not sparking and smoking like crazy. So we will try to run it on the track again. Well, there you have it. It's a thing. We kind of did something we're not really supposed to do with it. It's rear wheel drive now. And we finally got it to go around the track decently, I guess. I think the biggest thing really holding this guy back is the electronics. The WLToys transmitter is just the biggest. So, I mean, it's got your typical stuff. It's not horrible. It's got the throttle trim and steering trim, but you don't have endpoints or dual rate for the steering. So it makes it a real pain in the butt to try to get to go around the track well, because you really want to adjust your endpoints. I ended up having to move, I don't know if you can see here, but I moved my steering link, the drag link there, down so it's closer to the center of the servo on the servo horn. That way there was less steering, because there was just way too much steering and you can't turn it down on the remote at all. So I think if you had a better transmitter and receiver and even ESC, I think the car could do a lot better. Because as far as the mechanics are concerned, it doesn't seem horrible, right? Like, especially after, I mean, we've literally put months into this thing. Not a ton of time, but like over the course of months. Plus we have to order parts from China. It just takes a while. So we finally, I think we've got everything nice and smooth. Everything's moving nicely. There's not a lot of play. There's no binding. We ended up actually, I didn't show it in the video, but we ended up putting all metal gears in. So we have a metal spur and metal all-wheel drive pinion. And we ended up cutting, it comes with a shaft as well. We cut that shaft down again, kind of like the other shaft. But it's all metal now. So all the diff, the pinion, the spur, and the motor pinion, all metal. So we're not stripping that anymore. We'll keep messing with it. Maybe we'll do an update video, but really, it's kind of as far as we're willing to push it money-wise. Maybe at some point someday, if we end up with some extra electronics, we'll rip this all out. Maybe we'll try to put a brushless in there. I really think, like I said, if I could get this on the Noble and take this all out and just run the Noble on there, the adjustments there would be a huge help. But it's going. It's going. If you have any questions or comments, maybe you are way more experienced on this platform than I am, put it down in the comments below. Give me your tips and tricks in the comments from what you've seen. Maybe we did something that was obvious and wrong. You should tell us what we need to do to fix it to get it running even better. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them the best I can. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching. Why don't you go ahead and put down in the comments below RWD rules, because we turned it into a rear wheel drive. So RWD rules, and that lets me know you watched the whole video. And yeah, hopefully you like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. And yeah, we appreciate every subscriber. It's just a click for you, but it means the world to me. So I appreciate it, everybody. And until next time, get out there, run your cars, build something cool, modify some stuff, smash them, crash them, and bash them, and don't break the expensive parts.